look at the past year. Continue with June 2010, which is in page 57. Page 57. So worried. Now, okay, the examiner changed the syllabus. I think about this third round ago, by adding a lot of new things to this risk chapter to risk chapter. So he introduced quite a lot of new terms that previously not in the syllabus, like what is called subjective risk, dynamic environment, risk appetite. So all these are some terms that examiner introduced. Okay. Now anyway, to student now also not new because it's 3 rounds ago. Now then he also mentioned, I think about not in the syllabus. So there was one article he updated us. He said he will put in some calculation. Now that's all only. He said no new thing. The calculation is everything you learn from F5 to F9. Anything can come up. I'll be thinking suddenly P1 come out tax com. Okay, now it won't be like that. So I can only imagine so far this is the only question I see in the past year. Got numbers, except page number, okay, article, it was in the article, and the question number, this is the only question got numbers, but the numbers got no calculation. So at least I think maybe he is moving towards the idea that may give you some numbers so that you interpret, just to let you all know. Okay, all right, now we move on to see this question and see what it covers over here today. Now they say that distinguish between what is called voluntary and involuntary stakeholder. So still remember, right? Stakeholder. Give me a few more category beside this one. A few more. Internal, external. 又係依個。成日都係依個嘅，冇其他嘅咩 ？Recognize, unrecognize, some more. Primary, secondary, which is very important. Some more. The one that we did in the past year, that past year question, we did that one. Narrow. Yes, narrow and wide. The one that about build the dam one. Wow, you all forget it so far. Is it okay? Now, so there's quite a lot like active, passive. Okay. Then this is another one, voluntary, involuntary. Okay. So basically, what's the difference? You should know. So voluntary means you choose to be engaged or associated with the entity. You choose to be. And involuntary is you forced to. You don't have a choice. Okay. Now then they say, besides distinguish means you must define so that we will know the difference. No? Correct? No? That's distinguish. Okay. Then you should identify both types of stakeholder in Hesketh nuclear. Okay, both type of stakeholder in Hesketh nuclear. So the both type, what are they? So what are the voluntary, involuntary? That's the second part. And then assess the claim of 3 involuntary stakeholder affected. So I think from here you can more or less deduce that the examiner wanted you to identify at least 3 more. If not, here got no 3, then how to identify the claim, right? You must assess the claim. So this is more or less like the questions we tried the last round, the last class, okay? So now you see that actually the examiner repeated his idea, but with a new case study. But now you've got more or less an idea how to handle it. Now then part B, the trade union forward together has had a long relationship with HN, which is Heskett Nuclear, and represent not only the main workforce, but also the employee of the maintenance company replaced by the foreign worker. Now we don't know what they mean by this until we read the question. What maintenance company? And then HN, there's a trade union called Forward Together. Now, explain the role of trade union. This is the one that examiner wanted you all to know when you gave in the syllabus, the role of internal and external stakeholder. Now that's why I say, you look at the syllabus, actually you know everything that will come out in the exam. It's exactly the same one. Explain the role. Don't need to turn, I just show you. Explain the role of employee representative. See? It's exactly the same already. Now, that's a requirement. Explain the role of employee representative, such as trade union. Trade union. See? It's the same thing. Follow or not? That's why you look at the syllabus, you actually know what is coming out. Just that they don't come out all of it, they come out part of it. Now, the role of trade union in corporate governance, and then critically evaluate. Remember I told you in exam, you don't see this word, this is not P1. You find a P1 without this phrase, you bring me the paper, I eat the question in front of you. I told you before. Critically evaluate. Now the examiner wants you to evaluate. Now see in the syllabus, you must be able to evaluate. Evaluate is what? What is critically evaluate? What must you do? Critically evaluate means you must argue from both perspectives. Okay? So critically evaluate must have both perspectives. So you must see from two different angles. Now, critically evaluate from the perspective of the board, the contribution of Forward Together. And why do you think that they are good? And why do you think that they are not good? Critically evaluate. Why do you think they are good? Why they are not good? It must have yin and yang. Okay? Now then again, explain what an agency relation is. So again, talk about agency. We did this in the last question also. Same thing on agency. And then examine the board of HPC current agency relation and their objective. And then briefly, how would this be differ if HPC was a company with private shareholder? So I believe we are dealing with a question that maybe HPC is not a company with private shareholder. Because they ask you, how would this be different if this company is with private shareholders? Maybe now the company is not private shareholder. Now again, we don't know. Read on later. Okay, then the last requirement, D. Now, as part of HPC public relations effort, it is proposed that in response to a statement that should be prepared for the company's website. Now, again, you're going to put a statement in the website that will have to address two major challenges to their reputation. Draft the statement to include the following. Number one, referring to the NNN report, explain why accurate risk assessment is necessary at Heskett Nuclear. What is risk assessment again? You think of risk assessment, you think of what? Assessing risk is actually quantifying. Correct enough? And whenever you quantify risk, you always quantify risk into two attributes. You measure risk into what? One is the what? The last exam also with the last likelihood and impact. Likelihood and impact. Okay? And explain what a social and environmental footprint is. And then construct the argument that HN overall social and environmental footprint is positive. So talk about what is the meaning called footprint And after you explain the meaning of footprint, come up with an argument that their footprint is positive. That's it. So I purposely choose these two questions so that I hope you can see that the moment we did the questions 2 weeks ago and these questions today, you probably noticed that there's quite a lot of similarity in requirement. Like I did before. Now this is to show you the importance of going through the past year by this examiner. Because David Campbell, he repeats his question, and I notice his idea is quite shallow, in the sense that he's not so creative one. So on and off, he don't know what to do. He will take back the old question, modify a bit, change back the story, but requirement is more or less the same. So the more you do, the more familiar you become with the question. Okay? Now we're going to read the case. Oh, very long case. Sort down amazing. Okay? In exam, before you start, you do the same. Look at your neighbor. Hard say here, okay? 鼻哥窿都冇用. Now, ACCA Nuclear, it's a nuclear power station in Ireland, a large European country. The plant is operated by ACCA Nuclear Company, HPC, which in turn is wholly owned by the government. Oh, no wonder they ask you to talk about the agency, because this company is not owned by individual. They are owned by government. Now this kind of company, we normally call them as what company? It's called as GLC. What is GLC? Government link company. Okay? So a government link company can be a company that the government is a shareholder. Okay? Now, initially opened in the late 1950s, the power station grew in subsequent decades by the addition of several other facilities on the same site. HN now has the ability to generate 5% of Ireland's entire electricity demand and is one of the largest nuclear stations in Europe. At each stage of its development from 1950 to the present day, development on the site was welcomed by the relevant local government authorities, by the businesses that have supported it, and by the trade union that represent the majorities of the employees, called Forward Together, or FT for short, and also by the national Ireland government. So far they are happy with so-called HN, okay? They are happy with it. Now, a nuclear reprocessing facility was added in the 1980s. This is a valuable source of overseas income, as nuclear power producers in many parts of the world send material by sea to HN to be reprocessed. These include nuclear producers in several developing countries that rely on cheaper reprocessed fuel compared to virgin fuel that HN produces. HPC is loss-making, and it receives a lot of subsidy every year from the government of Ireland. HPC has proven itself uneconomic, but is deemed politically and environmentally necessary as far as for the government is concerned. Now stop here until this line you think and see. If you're talking about agency-wise, this company you still continue. You probably won't continue. The company been making losses, correct? If you're a shareholder or if you're an investor, will you want to invest in Malaysia Airlines? No, Malaysia Airlines all make losses. Who wants to invest? So that's why from agency point of view, you already see a difference. Loss making, but yet you still continue. Why? Well, because this is by government. So government's intention is different. You see now? Now continue. The government of Ireland has reluctantly accepted that large subsidy to HPC, which means they reluctantly accepted, which means they are not so happy. To them is, if can, I don't want, but I got no choice. I will still subsidize you, reluctantly. That will be necessary for many years. But they consider nuclear power to be a vital component of its energy portfolio, along with other energy sources such as oil, gas, coal, renewables, and hydroelectric. And this is part of a clean energy strategy. Now, unlike energy from fossil fuels such as coal, gas, and oil, nuclear generates negligible amount of polluting greenhouse gas. HN also provide much needed employment in the otherwise deprived part of the country, which means they actually locate this in those very ulu places that people don't invest on. But because you're there, you offer job there. Okay, this is what they say. The power station underpins and dominates the economy of its local area, and the local government authorities say that HN's plant is vital to the regional economy. Since it opened, however, the power station has been controversial. While being welcomed by those who benefit in terms of jobs, trade, reprocessing capacity, energy, a coalition has gradually built up against it, comprising those skeptical about the safety and environmental impact of nuclear power. Some neighboring countries believe themselves to be vulnerable to the radioactive contamination of the plant. In particular, there are two countries, both of whom say that they're concerned about HN's rise because of their geographical position. They are vocal opponents, which means they use their mouth to condemn. They disagree. Vocal, okay? Now, they say that their geographical proximity forced them to be concerned, as they're affected by the location of HN plant, which was not of their choosing. Well, from here you can see they must be the involuntary stakeholder. That's what the question is asking. Okay? Now, the government of B-Land, whose capital is just 70 kilometers across the sea from HN, which is situated on the coast, has consistently opposed HN and has frequently asked the government of A-Land to close it down. B-Land government claims that not only does the low-level emission of the site already contaminate the waters separating the two countries, but it also claimed that any future major nuclear incident would have serious implications for the citizens of B-Land. There is already some scientific support for this view, although opinion is divided whether B-Land is being irrational in its general opposition to HN. Now, the government of Sea-Land is also a vocal opponent of HN. Sea-Land is located to the north of B-Land and is about 500 kilometers away from A-Land. Some nuclear scientists have said that with such a large stretch of water between HN and Sea-Land, a much feared incident would be unlikely to seriously impact the government. Some commentators have gone further and say Sea-Land's concern was unfounded and then it was born of ignorance. FT, the trade union for HN employees, issued a statement saying that Sea-Land had no reason to fear and that the fear were entirely groundless because it's just too far away. Okay? HN's other vocal and persistent opponent is No Nuclear Now, NNN, a well-organized and well-funded campaigning group. Describing itself on the website as passionate about the environment, it described HN's social and environmental footprint as negative. NNN always pointed to an environmentally important colony of rare seal living near to the plant. It says the seal are dependent on local natural ecosystem around the plant and they are unable to move, arguing that the animals are of a significant risk from low-level contamination and they have no chance of survival if there's a more serious radioactive leak ever occurred. Seal, you know what is a seal? Don't know. So sometimes you don't know, you read, don't know what it is. Seal is something like that sea lion. Sea lion, you know. Okay, sea lion, don't know, you go to Zoo Negara, when they do the show, I don't know they got show. I think Malaysia Zoo don't have. Malaysia Zoo lousy. Okay? Now, NNN points to such a leak that occurred in the 1970s. saying that a leak proved that HN has a poor safety record and leak could easily recur. Each time an objection to HN power station is raised, the trade union robustly defend HN side in the media. So now you can see that the workers actually are very united. They help the company to protect the company. You know, this is one thing that you will be part of your answer later on. You know? Now, and argue for further investment. Based on the need to protect the job at the site, further the radiation leak in 1970 led to FT uniting with the board to argue that those stakeholders that wanted to use the leak as a reason to close down the site. The combination of the union and management was able to counter the argument of those asking for closure. HM places a great deal of emphasis on its risk management and often publicizes the fact that it conducts continual risk assessment and is in full compliance with relevant regulatory framework. Similarly, FT recently pointed out that HN had an impeccable safety record since the incident in 1970. Impeccable means no flaw, 没有缺点. Perfect one, that's called impeccable, something that you will not be able to destroy. You know? Okay? Since the incident, and says on the website that it is proud that the members are involved in ensuring the company is continually in full compliance with regulatory requirements placed upon it. The board of HPC, led by the chairman Paul, is under continual pressure from the government of ALAN to minimize government subsidy. Every year, the government places challenging targets on the board, requiring very stringent cost control at the power station. And in seeking to reduce maintenance costs on the expiry of the prior maintenance contract last year, the board awarded a new contract to an overseas company that brought its own worker in from abroad than to employ local people. Now, the previous contract company was outraged to have lost the contract, and move also triggered an angry response from the local workforce and from FT, the representative trade union. Now, FT said that it was deplorable that HPC had awarded the contract to overseas company when a domestic company in ALAN could have been awarded the work. The union convener K said that especially in the nuclear industry where safety was so important, domestic workers were more reliable than foreign workers who were brought in purely on the basis of cost, and in whose country safety standard in similar industry might not be so stringent. HPC said it had done nothing illegal, as foreign workers are allowed to work in ALAN under the international legal treaty. Furthermore, it argued that pressure by FT to raise wages over the year had created, and the government's subsidy target, the cost pressure to retender the maintenance contract. Now, on the 50th anniversary last year, NNN is what? No nuclear now. I don't know whether you still remember. Read until now, huh? NNN NNN. Okay. NNN published what is called a risk assessment for HM power station. It had calculated the probabilities and the impact of three prominent risks. The risk of major radioactive leak over the next 10 years. The probability is 10%, impact is 20%. The nuclear explosion is 20%, impact is 100%. Major terrorist attack is 10%, impact is 80%. Impact were arbitrary scale 1 to 100, where 100 defined was total nuclear annihilation of the area and thousands of deaths, which means you totally kill everyone there. As you know, that's 100 lah. Government of B-Land, C-Land seized upon the report, saying that it proved that HN is a genuine threat to their security and should immediately be closed down and decommissioned. The risk manager, Keith, vigorously disagreed with the assessment, said that probability impact were ridiculous, massively overstated, and intended to unnecessarily alarm people. The relation office was also angry about it and said it will issue a rebuttal statement. So they want to issue something to say that we want to push back whatever things you say over here. Okay? Now, so this is what you need to do later on in part B. Okay? Now, so we use discussion. Okay? We use discussion. Now, so when we do part A, so I think by now this should be quite an easy point to us, okay? Now you just have to start by defining what is voluntary and involuntary stakeholder. Okay, now, so I don't think this is difficult, so it's quite simple. You just have to follow what you learn. So what is voluntary? These are willingly choose to be engaged with the entity. Okay, now, so you must highlight lah, because they have choice. Okay, because they have choice, that means they have power to disengage themselves. Okay, you have a choice, you have a power to disengage. You want to continue or don't want to continue is all in your hand, right? Now, so involuntary is those that they are forced to be engaged. So they got no power to disengage themselves. Okay, they are forced to be engaged. Now, because they are forced to be engaged, which means they will have to bear all the impact or consequences that the entity can cause them. Okay? That the entity can cause them. So that's why voluntary and involuntary are often a grouping within narrow one, because it's more about how you affect the stakeholder and not the stakeholder affect you. If stakeholder affect you, normally it wouldn't be voluntary, involuntary, because they affect you means they have a choice. I mean, they would always be voluntary, like we say. Okay. Now, so you got to start by defining. Then you give some example. Who are the voluntary stakeholder to HN, to Heskett Nuclear? ALAN, as in the government, okay, to be more specific. I think ALAN government, agree? Their government is in full power to decide. They don't want the nuclear, they can close it down, so they will be the voluntary. So besides ALAN, who else can be voluntary? The employee can or not? Can I just write employee? Come on, I got employee. Come. Our friend here, you come. Amoy? Okay. Tim Kai? Who is the more? You cannot just write employee, then what must you write? Huh? Oh, I must state. Okay, so I must state employee of HN. Cái xin hả? Rồi đây cái nào đó? Gặp唔一樣，一樣，唔係一樣咯。嗱，係鬧你啦，多餘嘅係講，一樣啊係講。So now this point is still wrong. Why? You just show me the worker of HN. You still have never said that it is voluntary or not voluntary. Why? Because worker got many levels. Worker got many class also. What kind of worker? Who has choice? Do you think I have a choice to be here or not to be here? My boss takes shit and put on my face in front of the student and embarrass me. I must still go to his room and say, sorry boss, do I need to do that? Don't need, right? See or not? See, I have a choice. I got a freedom to move around because I have transferable skill. The word is called transferable skill. Because but if you say like you are a 50 years old man, you got no qualification, that you don't know who else will take you, then you got no choice. So that's why by just stating employee, your answer is definitely wrong. Understand? Not? Even though yes, employee is a stakeholder, but you still have not explained to me voluntary. So you must say employee of HN with transferable skill. Understand? Not? This is very important to reflect that the word employee is correct. Okay? Because worker that they have no choice, then they have to stick with it. Now, again, the businesses that supported HN, if they support means they have a choice, that's why they support. Now, even the trade union can also be voluntary. Okay, they choose to link with them. Now, involuntary to HM will be, now you can say, for example, employee of HN without the transferable skill, B-LAN, C-LAN, this one definitely they got no choice because they are in a different location. And one more, remember I told you that involuntary includes environment, includes future generation, includes dogs, chickens, correct? No? So now examiner gave you an example of what? Seal. The seal colony. Okay, the seal colony. Now these are all examples of involuntary, because these are people that they have no choices. Okay, they have no choices. Okay, so after you explain the difference, you gave the example from the case, then you must assess the claim. Okay, you must assess the claim. Now writing in full this one, I believe you can do it. Okay, so I don't want to spend so much time. Okay, you can read the answers also. Now we got to assess the claim. Now probably what you can do normally in P1 is before you start a point, you can, don't mind, go in and explain a bit like what do you mean by claim. Okay, so I can start very quickly in a brief point. In a brief point, I can explain the meaning of claim. Okay, now I did this the last class, so I don't want to go on again. So you just tell them that what is a claim. Claim is about demand. Okay, about demand from stakeholder. Then you also tell them that claim can be direct claim, can be indirect claim. Now why we mention direct, indirect claim? Because in this case you see or not that we have B-LAN and C-LAN government that they made direct claim. They have said that they want you to close down, but the seal colony cannot say. That's why someone else said for them. Because so that's why in your answer you can actually go on and tell them direct claim and indirect claim, because when you read the case you must have noticed the difference of the two. Okay? Okay. So before we go on and write the answer, I just want to know whether your direction is the right direction. If your right direction, actually what you write is correct. So what we need to do now is, what exactly that they want you to do? You tell me what you plan to do. Assess the claim of the three involuntary stakeholders. What do you feel like doing in the answer? Remember I told you that whenever examiners say assess something, you are required to either like quantify, assess, quantify, and you are required to conclude, assessment, correct or not? So whenever you do an assessment, then you will need to have some kind of quantification, conclude, so how would that apply to this requirement then? The claim of the stakeholder. What do you feel like doing then? Now, you got to assess the claim. When you assess a claim means you got to tell me what they want. But only tell me what they want is just identify claim. Just like I said, assess risk. Assess risk must start with identify risk, right? You never identify risk, how to assess? You identify the risk. But after you identify, you got to tell me the impact, the likelihood, what you want to do. That's called assessment. So in this case, when you assess a claim, actually you must assess and tell me that whether you think the claim is valid or invalid. That is called assess. If you don't do like that, then what are you trying to do? You probably will be thinking that I don't know what they want. They want claim, then I just go in and write what they want only. No. That means you are using your knowledge, but you are not understanding the requirement. That's why you're not answering what they want. They want you to assess the claim. That means you must tell me what they want, then from there, you must say, do you agree with them or not? I think yes, they can make a claim. Now, for example, B land and C land. B land asks you to close down. C land also asks you to close down. Make sense or not? Who doesn't make sense? C land doesn't make sense. Why? Think and see lah. Nuclear power in Japan. Nuclear power in Japan. Okay? Korea asks them to close down. Korea close or not? Korea and Japan is closed. Australia suddenly protests. Bring 1 million people walk on the street and ask Japan to close down. Australia. You see, no? Why not in US better? You see, no? So far away, then you want people to close down, doesn't make sense anymore. Follow, no? So that's why this is what we mean by assess. Understand, no? Now you don't understand the requirement, you're going to write a lot of rubbish and then no marks. You see, no? So you must know what they ask to decide what to answer. Okay? Now, so here, they want you to assess a claim. So when you assess, you need to identify the claim and then you conclude whether it's valid or invalid, or recognized or not recognized. Okay, so I start with the B land. So I don't start with worker. Worker, all this, nothing much to say. We must refer to case. Now, what is the issue that B land is concerned? The claim is what they are concerned of. I think B land said something, right? Now, B land said not only I'm worried about the low level emission that is on a continuous basis, I also worry about nuclear incident. Two things. I'm worried about two things. So B land is concerned of a long-term, low-level radioactive emission from the site, okay, from HN site, that will pose a long-term health effect. Now, these are health effect you can't see now, but maybe 50 years you can see. Can see now? So these things that they say. Now, not only they are worried about the long term, they also worried about the acute problem that suddenly you got an accident. They also worry about a sudden accident. An incident like a major leak. Okay? And because of that, they claim that HN should be closed down. So now my answer will come in, you know, that I'm going to assess. So when I actually assess, now the thing that we can assess to support their claim include, number one, 70 kilometer a close proximity. Okay? Lagi? Anything else that can make them complain or protest louder? They had a scientific study, you know. That's what the question said. Okay? There are some scientific support. Okay? They had a study. So they not simply say, well, no, they had a study. So the 70 kilometer, the scientific study, in fact, plus a 1970 incident happened before. Okay, happened before. And because of all that, they made a claim. So what do you think? Now we think that the claim from B land is reasonable, legitimate. I think they have a valid reason or right to demand it to be closed down, because they have all these concerns which is very close and affect them a lot. Okay, so this is B land. Now, then we're going to see A land. Okay, C land. Okay, C land. Now, if you look at C land, they actually have the same claim as B, that they want to close HN. But what is the basis? Now the basis is they are saying that they are worried of becoming a victim of the contamination also. Okay? On the ground of an allegation. Tuduhan, not real. Okay? No study one. So it's more of an allegation that they will also be victim to any nuclear incident. Now, but if you look at the case, they located 500 kilometers, plus even the nuclear scientist has acknowledged. The scientists also say, even a much feared incident, which means those incident which is very serious one, even though that kind of incident, it was still unlikely to seriously impact them because they're just too far. So that shows that the nuclear scientists also acknowledge that they will have very low impact. And if you look at the case mentioned that their claim is born of ignorance. So if based on what I analyze, I think you will see quite obviously that we will say the claim is unreasonable. See, I got an assessment again. I would say that this is unreasonable. Okay, I squeeze in the last one. The seal colony. Now, if you look at the seal colony, first I think I would just make a point. This is more of a point that will add credit, especially if your answer is borderline. That examiner want to give you some point here and there. They will take this into account. Okay, that this is an indirect claim, and the claim is made by NNN on behalf of the seal. Okay, because they can't speak. The claim is also about what? They want you to close down HN power plant. Okay, so it claim about the close down HN power plant. Now, so of course, when you argue about the claim, the effect is the same, okay? Because of the similar effect that we say above, that emission may affect them. A leak can kill them. That's what they say. A leak can kill them. So now the question is, this reasonable? What do you think? So end of the day, this is a bit more difficult to say, because we always have this issue about humans see that we are more prestige than anything else in the world, because we are human. We have this capability to think. We have intellectual. Animals don't have. You know? That's why they always think that animals, if it's a nuisance, you can take a gun and shoot them. Correct? No? So a dog bite a human, die. Even before you punish the owner of the dog sure must die. Correct? No? A human bite a human until die. Do you straight away take a gun and shoot the human? No. Must go to the court. Then must try first. See whether he's guilty. Then you should see. The value of a human and the value of an animal is very different. You know? So in this case, when you want to argue whether this is valid or not, the argument of the validity depend on the ethical position of a decision maker. Okay, it depends on an ethical decision of the ethical position of a decision maker. So you got to see that what is the value of the seal. The value of the seal to human and to the economy. Okay, the value of the seal to human or to economy, to the environment. Now, then if you look at from what you learn in the first beginning chapter, then you can say that the argument depending on whether you are from a normative motivation or an instrumental motivation. Because if you are from an instrumental motivation, you only see from economy. You only see from money. And if you see from money, then you will ask yourself that in this world, if there's no seal, then what will happen? In this world, there's no jaws, there's no sharks. What will happen? Nothing happen also, right? You don't bother also, right? See, that's why a lot of us don't care, ma. So to all of it, no shark, then don't eat shark fin. 最多唔愛食魚翅咯，冇相干我有齋嘅。Human like that, think like that, So if you look at it in that value, then you will say that doesn't matter. Still die, but if you look from a different point of view, that you're more ethical, you're more concerned about environment, then you say cannot. This is a species, That once it's wiped out from the world, it's wiped out forever. So it depending on which point that you look at. So examiner, I think he used a word called the argument of the claim is contestable. That means debatable. You can argue. Okay? So contestable means depending on where you come from. For example, are you from the perspective of normative or instrumental? Okay, normative or instrumental. This is what you argue over here. In fact, there's also another one that you can talk about here, because there's so many things can link to your study one. Okay, that's why when you write the answer, you combine. But I think you not yet learned. You started ethics already, right? Just started ethics. You have to social responsibilities position. Pristine capitalist. Okay, now, so there is a social responsibility position. Okay, there's a social responsibility position that can suit this very well. One position that we call deep ecologist. Okay, one position that we call it a deep ecologist. So what is a deep ecologist? Deep ecologist refers to a person that he see environment, animal as equal with human. That you don't become better. Human or a tree or a dog or a seal is the same. And because when I look from that position, we are the same. Then when you say that the nuclear can make people die, make seal die is equally the same. So in that case, this is guilty. Then this is not right. Then yes, it's valid. So this is what you must say. Okay, so, this kind of thing, as I say, you study cannot earn. You must learn and apply. Then you know where to bring in the point. Okay? Right, so that's the first part. Okay, finish off your part A. Now we're going to move on to part B. Alright, now part B, they ask about the role of trade union. Okay, they are about role of trade union. And then they want you to do a critical argument. Okay? Now, this part is definitely theory. You don't have to apply to the case. Okay? You don't have to apply to the case. Now, this one you must apply to the case. Okay? You must apply to the case. Now, so what am I going to do? I'm going to start with the heading, cover the first part. Okay. I will start by telling you what is a trade union. What is a trade union? Now, trade union is an example of employees representative, where it is a continuous association of worker. It's an association, it's a continuous association, because you get all your workers to continue. Okay, worker can leave, but they will have new worker come in. So it's a continuous association of worker, where its objective is to defend rights of the worker and provide benefits to its member. Now, if you read back the theory, trade union, we look from two perspectives. One, we see that the role of trade union in the sense that to the worker. If the role of trade union to worker, good to worker means good to company. If good to worker means good to company, no. Like union asks for higher pay, or go and go. Then the company will pay more, so it's not good. So that's why if you look at the role to the worker, normally union's role to worker is what? Now the main thing, besides giving them benefit, besides provide benefit, they also do collective negotiation or bargaining. Okay? Collective negotiation. What else they do for worker? What else they do for worker? Union 做一做咩啊？好多嘢㗎。Malaysia useless only overseas very powerful one They can plan industrial action. Industrial action like what? Mogok Mogok call what? Mogok call? Say they write Mogok in exam Then the marker, you could tell the marker, look, bracket, this is Malay word, I just forgotten English. Please check from Google. Strike, strike. Okay, they plan for a strike. Strike is a situation that you want to work. They want you to work, but you don't want to work. Because when you strike, you affect the business. For example, like British Airways, their worker always strike. Airline, every time airline got problem, cannot pay their worker, then they strike. Okay, so it's like Malaysia Airline, all these, their worker union all very powerful. That's why the company also very scared of them. You fly Malaysia Airline, even though the company lost making, but at least you don't feel so scared. You fly Air Asia, I tell you, but I still fly Air Asia because it's cheap, But the union in Air Asia not so powerful because worker there, they are very scared of their boss. So sometimes the engine got problem. There's this guy must sign one, the pilot must sign and say fly or don't fly one. If Malaysia Airlines got this problem, the pilot won't sign one. They don't sign, they don't care one. They say, I don't care what the company do, don't sign, I don't care, I won't fly. They don't fly. So that's why they put passenger safety number one. Air Asia, the pilot say cannot this problem cannot fly. Then Tony Fernandez, this one my friend say one. My friend is a pilot with mask. Okay, Tony Fernandez will call the guy. Can you fly? You cannot fly, is it? Sure cannot. Okay, never mind. He called another pilot. Who can fly the plane? Then they'll send another pilot, take the plane and fly. So sometimes you fly Air Asia, you can feel it one. The plane got problem also fly one. And because they need to save time, every time got turbulence, they don't route away one. That's why Air Asia very common. You always got turbulence because turbulence not serious one can go one. Can go risk but low risk but they go Mars they will detour, they will move away and cut, but 時間長and then they are 立油食油貴so that's why this is the difference 飛多啲 Air Asia 你飛下飛上天 Now another problem we have is called lockout. Understand what's a lockout? Lockout and strike is complete opposite. Lockout is they don't want you to work, but you want to work because you need the money. So normally lockout is in those countries when they have depression. Economy is so bad. Bosses come and tell you, sorry, I can only give you 1 month, half month pay. Half month you sit at home, you come also no work, that's called a lockout. Okay, so all these are examples of problems that they'll do. So they'll try to go against a lockout, they'll fight with you. Now, and they can do political action. So all these are things that you can put in, but these are not a main point. So the main point that you must bring in is the role of trade union to corporate governance system. Okay, you must bring in how the trade union will bring benefit to corporate governance. Now, so I will include in my point number 1. Union will unite the workforce. And uniting workforce can actually help to improve productivity. Okay, it will actually help to improve productivity. Now, in which way that uniting workforce can help to improve productivity? Now, we just say, like, for example, the union had a collective agreement with the management. And because this is a collective agreement, you're going to come back and tell all the workers to follow. So this is how they will actually improve productivity. Now, number 2, we believe that union can also be whistleblower. For example, like they will report non-compliances, accidents, fraud, inefficiency. Okay. Now, why they dare to report? Because they are not alone. They don't represent one person. They represent all. So for them to say, it's better than you say. For example, you want to complain something, you're afraid. You're afraid like the government will boycott you. You don't like Najib. You dare not say, ma. You scared Najib will come send people bring you to the jail. You know? But you go and tell DAP. And then DAP say, I dare to say. And because DAP represent everyone. You cannot catch all, ma. So this is the idea, can say, no? So you report about the non-compliant, so union will report for you. Now, in a way, besides becoming a whistleblower, this is also a deterrent to the management. Okay, this is also a deterrent to management, so that they always remind themselves that the union is there. So you must be careful. Don't do wrong things. You do wrong things, then they will come and report and they tell the shareholder, then we'll be in trouble. Now, this is the theory. So write all that to explain. How you write is up to you, but you just write in paragraph. This is what they do. So now we need a critical evaluation in the case. So they ask us the contribution to the board. Okay, so now a critical evaluation to HPC board. So what is the critical evaluation part to HPC board? Now you have to argue from good and not good. Now, the union's advantage to HPC. So what do you see as the good thing you have here in the case that relates to HPC? The good point of that union that relate to HPC is what? The part that, now they mentioned that there are quite a number of times HPC was facing a lot of pressure from different stakeholders, and it was the union that they work with the management to push away or brush away the claim from all these stakeholders that want to close them down. Now this in a way is the good to you already. They unite together and they stand in line with the management. So this is one advantage you can see now. So the case actually reported that there are many instances the union stand in line with HN to defend against all the negative allegation that they want the company to close down, and in most cases they have succeeded. Now you can see this is one of the main things that they keep on mentioning in the case. Now there's also another point that I'm not sure whether you see that also. Okay, this is a bit of indirect point. Now this is the first paragraph when they started, okay, when they started in the 1950s, it was actually welcomed by a lot of people, including Forward Together, FT. What do you mean by Forward Together? Malay say what? Maju bersama. We want to go together. Why people use this kind of phrase, forward together? That shows the inherent value that they say that we must be together and we go to the front together. So we want to be with you. Yes, you know? So this shows that at the beginning, initial point, the union must have played a lot of role to promote job security, in the sense that they want people to come and work with you. So this is what you can see, that at the initiation stage, FT must have supported HN by granting them there is this word we call a license for you to exist, a license that we permit your business to be in this environment. We want you to be here. What term do you call that? What word is that? You describe a company that you want the company to be here. You like the company. Huh? Permit. Where you a permit? Give you permit, go back, go India, you have permit. Yo, last time you study, now again forget me. Corporate citizen. Use vocab that you learn in the class, so that your answer really look impressive and mature. Okay, so you granted them a corporate citizenship. Now corporate citizenship, that you can even see that from its name, that you call Forward Together, that the union has actually agreed to grow with HN. Now this is actually a form of job security, a form of ease of recruitment. Now, you don't believe, you see lah. Next time when this Linus start, now everyone so against Linus lah, okay? If the same atmosphere continue, that people still go against Linus, you work in Linus, what will happen? You know, now the people in the internet very powerful one, correct not? Then people will write there, 你要红，我们给他红。Put your photograph in the internet, everyone share and say this guy work in Linus. 你惨了，你要买杂饭，你都不用买。You see, that is corporate citizenship, you know. So this is something that people don't grant the citizenship. People don't give it to you. So like that, who dare to work there? That's why they have no choice. Probably they're going to bring in foreign workers. You know, this is the idea that we see here. So that's why they say that the company come to Malaysia is good because they give job, employment, all these things. And you think and see, I don't think so. People who dare to work there. So end up you bring more foreigners, more Indonesian, Bangladeshi will come in. Okay. Now all that is the good. So I argued the good to the company. But I also must see that the union had some problem now, right? Okay, the union had some problem. Now, the union's problem is, you would see that they say they had constantly pressured them to increase the pay. And pressure them to increase their pay is at the same time contradicting the government's objective to cut subsidy. Okay? Now, not only that, then you realize that HN wanted to retender the maintenance contract, but this has received a lot of negative responses. Now, from there, you might expect protests, okay, dissatisfaction, and it might affect the reputation of the company. It might even hasten the issue about people want you to close down. Now, all these are the things that we see here. Okay, alright, move on. Okay, now see the next part here in part C. See, examiner started part C by asking you to explain agency. Okay, go on. You miss later, you copy. Okay, now. Okay, first you must put in your answer is you talk about agency theory. So what is it that you're going to say when you talk about agency theory? What do you want to say? Huh? Example, your point, say what? You mentioned about what? Principle, agent, a subject, that this subject belongs to principle, that agent will take care of it, you protect the interest of the principle. Now, you got to say like that means you're in the right track. But if the moment you start, you straight away say that company shareholder wrong already, your whole answer wrong already. You are not explaining agency. That is giving an example of agency. You understand? No? So that's why you cannot talk about company shareholder. This is not about company shareholder. This is about agency theory. So don't start by saying company shareholder. You start like that, then sorry, director, all that wrong already. You must start with the word principal agent. You must say the principal appoint agent, and agent will ... Okay. After you say that, okay, then you apply to the case. So you apply to the case. Now, in the case, an agency relationship existed with, who is the principal? With the shareholder of HN, HPC, the company name. The shareholder of HPC being the principal. But the shareholder now is who? The government. The shareholder is the government of A-Land. Okay? And the board of HPC is the appointed agent for the government of A-Land to run and manage HPC, the nuclear power provider. So you have to answer two part one. Okay, you have to answer two part. You cannot just go in and start telling me company shareholder. Now, that's why you see examiner way of answer. Agency is one trust between agent, principal, and oblige the agent to meet the objective by the principal. See, you know, he never start with company shareholder. You start like that, you sure don't get marks. Okay? Now, then only they start and apply to you that in this case, that agency is between the government and the board of HPC. Follow now? Now, so this is what you must do over here. Okay. So after you discuss agency, they want you to talk about now what is the current agency relationship and the objective, which means you must tell me from the case. Okay, you must tell me from the case in which way the agency relationship and objective, okay, are being identified and created. Now, first, the agency is through a company. So you must say that, one point. The agency relationship is established via a conventional company or corporate setup. Understand? Because not necessarily agency must be through a company. Charity also got agency, but it's not through a company. Government also got agency, but it's not through company. So that's why you understand that this is through a company. So you probably missed that lah. Some student will not explain that one. Okay? They straight away jump into company before even you identify the company. So this is how they have established agency. It's through the company setup, with just the shareholder is the government and not public investor. Okay, now as any agent, the board must fulfill objective of principle, because HPC is GLC, government linked company, then it is not meant for profit-based objective. In fact, HPC shall carry objective in line with the objective of the principle for the A-land government, the people who voted for A-land. So we link the objective, that your HPC's objective must be the same objective for the government, because the government is also an agent for the people. Okay, so this is what you must identify over here. Now, then what objective that we want here? So the objective is, we have recognized that HPC business is not profitable. They already say it's loss making, but the government will sustain by giving large subsidy. Now, however, the government is hoping for a reduction in subsidy. So that means they have an objective that they want you to run in a more economical manner by controlling costs. So you must see carefully, the manner here is manner in terms of controlling costs. Okay? Now then they also mention that HPC is part of a portfolio of energy sources to give a clean and efficient energy. Now see, the logic behind why they need a clean and efficient energy is, again, this is expected because the government of a land is actually accountable to the citizen. Now all that is the agency relationship. So the objective is not about profit. The objective is about how to blend into the portfolio, how to make sure that you control the cost. So it's more on that part. Okay? Now, so they ask you, like, if HPC is owned by private shareholder, now how different will this be if, let's say, that HPC will be owned by private shareholder? Now differences, objective of the principal is going to be return and profit. Okay, so the company must turn it into a business model that promises return. So we are not looking into clean energy. We are looking into, can you bring back money? Okay. Now, if this is a private owned company, then it will be unlikely that the A-land government will subsidize. And if A-land government does not subsidize, then it becomes more critical now that HPC shall be sustainable. Agree? you cannot sustain your business will close down already, because you can't expect shareholder every year dump money for you just to continue so that you benefit the people. So that's why you must come up with something more sustainable, and this will definitely affect the choice of your decision. Example, maybe when you consider the retender of maintenance contract, okay, so the issue about the retendering of maintenance contract. Now, so this is something that I'm going to bring in, because earlier, at least I would still think, should I maintain the contract? Because the government wants us to create jobs. We give job to outsider and foreigner, the government may not be happy. So now I think I must think carefully that probably I will give it to outsider because it's cheaper. Now, it might even affect you in terms of, for example, like your internal control system, that you may start to look at a lot of cost benefit analysis, that you might take more risk in the sense that you want to maintain profitability. Unlike government, they don't care one. So that's why in this case you find that things would have been much different over here. Okay, now all that is things that you got to explain here in part C. So this is all the 32 marks now. Okay, okay, now I will explain some point for part D, then we take a break. Okay, now see why student will not answer correctly for questions in part D. Okay, I just tell you the problem, then maybe you can go and read the answer. Now, the reason why the student will fail D is they discuss generally about risk assessment. They talk about, oh, what is risk assessment? And risk assessment is very important because it tells us the impact, it tells us the probability. Now, yes, of course, this is one part of the answer, but this is not the main thing that we want. Now, the main point that you must get is you must link to N report. Now, what is the N report? Now, N report is they have ridiculously overstate. That is what you guys are saying. Okay, that they have ridiculously overstate the impact, the probability. So that's why it's very crucial and very critical that you got to tell them in the answer that risk assessment is meant to give us a clear picture of what we are taking or facing. It will allow the stakeholder to understand the trade-off, in the sense that nuclear power is acceptable because of the low risk. Okay? Now, the moment you look at what they announce here, they say that, wow, there is a 20% chance, is very high, 20% chance the power plant explode in 50 years. It's very serious, okay? So you are thinking that in 5 of the plant, 1 of them will explode. Now, you are giving people a figure which is very scary. And when figures are very scary, people dare not accept. Confidence will not be there. Then people will go against your business. So that's why we are telling them that if you see the figure wrongly, you will respond differently to us. So that's why it's very important that this kind of thing must be accurate. So if it's not accurate, then you will not understand our business. Now, this is what you explain. You just have to bite this point. And you are not talking about, oh, risk assessment is important because we know the likelihood, we know the impact. Then you are wrong already. Because you are telling me about the risk assessment. You are not telling me about the report. I want you to tell about the report. And the report is attacking you in the sense that, hey, your business cannot, very risky, you know. That is the report. That's why you must tell them this report is wrong. That's why you misunderstand our business. We want you to know, if you don't have a correct risk assessment, you will not agree with our business one. Just like they say Linus. Everyone tell Linus is very dangerous one because you misunderstand. You always hear from this guy who say dangerous. You look at the scientific number. I never say I support, I say example only. Okay? So you look at the scientific number. Actually, you look at the number, you will understand. You say that Linus is actually a good project. This is what you must say. You are arguing from that point of view. Okay, you know? Now, so this is the first part of the answer. So that's why they say we are looking for professional mark. So if you don't argue like that, you got no professional mark. Your answer is not professional. You just tell me why is risk assessment important. You don't understand the question. Understand? Okay. Now then, number 2, they are asking you about that one can be theory. So the second part of the requirement is they ask about footprint. Okay. So if you talk about footprint, okay, fine. Then you talk about what is the impact that you left behind. Now, they ask 2 things, not only environmental, they say social and environmental. Social and environmental. Now, example like jobs, okay, having jobs, pollution. Now, I must give some negative one. So the social one is like, for example, you believe that the lifespan has shortened. Okay? World live longest one from which country? Japan. I also think so. Recently, report come out. The world longest lifespan people is no longer Japanese woman. They China 邊度 Malaysia 係咯，我睇人哋點死嘛，咧長命啲咯，食長命啲，我睇你把你身威得幾耐啊？你知道 ？Now the world longest one, okay, is Hong Kong woman. They say the report came out already. I think June or a few months back they released Hong Kong woman because they say Japan got more tsunami now, so more people died already. So that's why the average pull down by 0.4 year. So now Hong Kong very strong, but I still cannot accept. How can people in Hong Kong strong? Okay, their place like that. Now, so the issue about negative one is what you must start first, because now N attack you from negative. So they say that, oh, this is your problem, you know. People got radiation. You look at the baby come out from the stomach, 2 legs become 4 legs, 2 hands become 1 hand, can say now the eyes become 4 eyes, that's all become like alien. So this is all example of things that they say, they claim. So now you must rebut. So when you rebut means you must argue why you think is good. So your answer will come in from the second part and you will tell them, so I shouldn't put job here. Okay? You must put here socially. You say that I bring development. I go to those areas very deprived one. Government don't even wish to develop. They got no school. Now we got 5 schools. Then people got no road. Now we give you road. They got no access to clean water. We build the water system. We bring all these things in. Isn't that better improvement? So do you want to live longer, 70 years, but your life is okay? Or do you want to live 50 years, but you enjoy your life? There's a trade-off lah. Which one do you want? 阿邊啫？80歲，好慘嘅生活，冇水飲嘅飲羅庚水，你啱冇？ Or you want 50 years, clean water? This is the trade-off. Can you see, no? So you must tell them socially, and you must tell them environmentally that we are exchanging clean energy, which is definite, 绝对 clean, efficient, compare with a likelihood of contamination. Likelihood only, you know. So isn't that something that is easy for you to decide? You want something that is definitely clean to exchange with a potential problem? Or do you want something that is definitely dirty so that you don't have a potential problem, but you also die, you know? Can see, you know? You die from radiation, also die. You die from the dirty smoke, you also die. Can see, you know? So this is the thing that we see. So that is what you must argue to rebut. Now this is the second point that you must say. That's why you must say both sides. Now all that must be in the answer. Follow now? Okay? Now this is part D over here. Now we take a break, okay? We come back and we'll see one more question.